Right now, in millions of kitchens across this country, freezers are humming, plastic wrap is tearing, and meat is still going bad. Not dramatically, not in some obvious smell it from the hallway way. Quietly, slowly, gray patches spreading across chicken breasts. Ice crystals colonizing the surface of ground beef nobody remembers buying. Pork chops sealed in bags that now feel like bricks wrapped in frost. You bought it on sale, you froze it responsibly, and it is rotting anyway, just cold enough to hide the evidence. The average American household throws away roughly a third of the meat it purchases, not because they are careless, because freezing was never the preservation method it was marketed to be. That is hundreds of dollars a year exposed to freezer burn, oxidation, texture collapse, and slow nutritional decay behind a door nobody opens often enough to notice. There is a preservation method that requires no electricity, no vacuum sealer, no chest freezer, no plastic. It cost nearly nothing. It kept meat safe and edible for months, sometimes years. And it was not invented by a startup or discovered in a laboratory. It was the default food preservation system for most of recorded human civilization. Military quartermasters used it to feed armies across continents. British naval ships carried it across oceans for months without refrigeration. Arctic expeditions survived on it. Every rural household in America before 1930 practiced it as naturally as boiling water. What your great-grandparents did with a handful of cheap minerals worked more reliably than what your $800 freezer does today. And the science behind it is not even controversial. Here is what nobody explained to you clearly enough. Even when you freeze meat correctly, deterioration does not stop. It slows. Ice crystals still form inside muscle fibers. Those crystals puncture cell walls. When the meat thaws, moisture drains out. That pink liquid pooling at the bottom of your defrost tray is not blood. It is the cellular structure of your food collapsing. Meanwhile, fat continues to oxidize even at freezer temperatures. After 3 to 6 months, what you pull out of that freezer is not what you put in. The USDA acknowledges this. The science is settled. Freezing is a delay, not a solution. Now hold that against this. Salt curing, the oldest preservation technology on Earth, requires one ingredient available at every grocery store for under $2 a pound. It is shelf-stable at room temperature. It demands no energy cost, no special equipment. A single box of kosher salt can preserve more protein than a chest freezer running for a month. And it does not just delay spoilage, it stops the biological process entirely. This was standard household knowledge 2 generations ago. Families taught it the way they taught children to sweep a floor. Then it vanished from school curricula, from cooking culture, from ordinary conversation, almost simultaneously. That disappearance was not accidental. Salt preservation is not a folk trick. It is applied chemistry with a 4,000-year paper trail. Ancient Egyptian records document it. Roman soldiers were partially compensated in salt. The word salary descends directly from salarium. Scandinavian trade empires were built on salted and dried fish. The British Royal Navy fed entire fleets on salt pork stored in barrels for months at sea without a single degree of refrigeration. The mechanism is not mysterious. Sodium chloride creates a hypertonic environment around muscle tissue. It pulls moisture out through osmosis and drops what food scientists call water activity, abbreviated AO, below the threshold where virtually all dangerous bacteria can survive. Below 0.85 AW, Clostridium botulinum stops reproducing. Salmonella stops reproducing. Listeria stops reproducing. The meat becomes, in microbiological terms, inhospitable to the organisms that cause spoilage and illness. The Journal of Food Science has published extensively on these thresholds. Harold McGee's On Food and Cooking, one of the most respected food science references in print, explains the same principles in accessible language. The USDA's own preservation guidelines confirm the efficacy. None of this is fringe, none of this is debated. Then there is curing salt, sodium nitrite, sometimes called Prague powder, used since the Middle Ages. It does something table salt alone cannot. It specifically inhibits Clostridium botulinum, the organism behind botulism, the single deadliest common foodborne threat. It also prevents lipid oxidation, the process that makes stored fat go rancid. The result is meat that stays safe, flavorful, and structurally intact at room temperature for extraordinary periods of time. Italian prosciutto, cured for 12 to 36 months. No refrigeration during production. South African biltong. Scandinavian gravlax. American country ham hanging in barns through summer heat. These are not novelties. They are monuments to the same cheap mineral doing exactly what it has always done. During both World Wars, salt-cured and nitrate-preserved rations formed the backbone of military field nutrition across multiple nations, not because they tasted good, but because they worked without infrastructure, without power, without anything except knowledge. The method was proven at industrial, military, and household scale for millennia, and then, within a single generation, it was quietly reclassified as specialty or artisanal. The question worth asking is not whether salt curing works. The question is why a family in 1935 knew exactly how to do this, and a family in 2025 does not. The United States refrigeration and cold chain industry is valued at over $280 billion. Every link in that chain profits from one assumption, that cold storage is the only safe way to preserve food at home. Freezer manufacturers, energy providers billing you monthly, vacuum sealer companies selling proprietary bag refills, frozen food brands charging a premium for flash frozen labeling. The consumer is locked into a repeating cost loop. Buy the appliance, pay the electricity, replace the parts, buy the bags, lose the food anyway, start again. That loop never ends. It was never designed to. Home economics courses that once taught canning, smoking, salt curing, and dry storage were systematically defunded and restructured starting in the 1960s and 70s. The replacement curricula assumed the industrial food supply chain as the default. Self-sufficiency was edited out. Dependence was edited in. The knowledge did not vanish because it was dangerous. It was still sitting in USDA Extension Service bulletins and food science textbooks, buried in technical language about water activity coefficients, nitrite concentrations in parts per million, and equilibrium humidity calculations. Language designed for specialists. Language that made ordinary people feel the method was too complex, too risky, too far outside their ability. And then in the 1970s, a wave of nitrite panic, loosely tied to early studies on nitrosamines at doses far beyond what any curing recipe would produce, created lasting public fear. The scare was eventually challenged by modern toxicology reviews confirming that proper curing concentrations, typically between 120 and 200 parts per million, posed negligible risk. But the fear stuck, and the fear was useful. Nobody needed to ban salt curing. They only needed to make it sound dangerous enough that you would never try it. An industry cannot easily profit from a fix that ends the cycle. Here is what was kept from you in plain language. A basic dry cure is salt, a small amount of sugar, and optionally a measured dose of curing salt. Prog powder, number 1 for short cures, number 2 for long-age projects. You apply it to the meat at roughly 3 to 5% of the meat's total weight. You coat the surface evenly, place it in a non-reactive container, and store it in a cool space. A refrigerator works, a cellar works, a ventilated garage and cool weather works. Then you wait. A duck breast or a piece of salmon can be ready in 5 to 7 days. Pork belly for pancetta, closer to 2 weeks. A full ham or bresaola takes weeks to months. The salt at any grocery store costs pennies. Curing salt ordered online or from a butcher supply shop runs $5 to $10, enough for dozens of batches. The equipment is a container, a kitchen scale, and patience. That is it. That is the entire technology that fed armies, sustained trade empires, and kept rural families fed through winters without a single watt of electricity. One honest caution: salt curing is not a magic replacement for every form of refrigeration. It works best on whole muscle cuts. Ground meat requires more advanced technique and stricter control. The salt ratio matters. Too little and the cure is unsafe. Too much and the meat becomes inedible. Temperature matters too. In hot, humid climates, you need refrigeration support or a dedicated curing space with controlled airflow. These are real boundaries, and they are exactly the kind of boundaries a responsible 1920s farm wife would have known by instinct. The knowledge always included its own limits. But here is what sits underneath all of it. The science was never missing. The method was never disproven. The material never became expensive. What changed was access, not to the salt, but to the understanding. Salt curing is one technique among dozens that were once ordinary household fluency. Smoking, fermentation, confit, vinegar pickling, lye preservation, each one was stripped from common knowledge and replaced by a product you have to keep buying. Your great-grandparents did not have a freezer. They had knowledge, and that knowledge cost nothing to pass down, which is exactly why someone made sure it wasn't.